This is the Diablo Cast with your host, Glenn Cannon.
What's up? It is the Diablo Cast. I am here with Steve and Michelle from Upwell. Upwell's been around for quite some time. Phenomenal band, incredible musicians. How you guys doing?
Doing good. How about you?
Well, I'm hanging in there, man. I'm above ground, so I'll take it, you know?
Same.
You guys have it's like a super Yuletide thing going on behind you guys. It's epic.
It's our Twin Peaks Christmas.
Yeah, Twin
Dude, we haven't even decorated yet. And it makes me wonder if we're gonna.
I just did like yesterday. Yeah.
Okay. We usually do, but you know, I feel like I'm slacking now.
I know, right?
What's happening, guys? You just released a new single.
Yeah.
Let's talk. So are you gonna do a series of singles and then release an EP? What's the plan?
That's the plan, yeah.
Probably a couple. This full length is only 6 songs, but you know how we roll. Like some of the songs, one of them's like almost 10 minutes.
I like a nice
7.
You guys
so
will
give
you
40 minutes, but yeah.
That's killer, man. No,
you can't give away everything.
The 10-minute rides that you provide are usually well worth the 10 minutes, in my opinion.
Yep.
So that'll be coming into next year. You're going to release a few singles and then put out the whole EP.
Yeah. Like full length. I mean, it's 40 minutes, I guess. So like these days, that's a full length.
Perfect for vinyl.
Yeah, good for vinyl. If we can get that together.
So with the first single coming out, how's the fan response been? It's been out now a couple, 3 weeks, a month. Has it been a month?
Yep, something like that. We did 11/11, so yeah.
It was actually really good.
Yeah.
I gotta love
it. We got a lot of new people liking our page and a lot of response. It was nice.
No, that's awesome. I mean, how long were you guys working on this material? I guess there's a million ways to approach that. So I guess first, talk to us a little bit about the writing approach. How do you guys build out the songs? Where do they start?
Do you want to answer that?
Man. Well, it's all over the map. I mean, sometimes we'll jam, come up with ideas to bring to the table, and we'll just go from there and develop it from there with the band. Sometimes we all just, Paul might start going
yeah, Paul will sing a guitar riff.
Okay, that's this, and that'll turn into a cool riff.
Brian, our bass player, too.
Yeah, Brian will bring stuff to the table. It's definitely like a group thing. No matter where the idea starts, like we all develop it and just loop.
So you guys just, because some of those arrangements get really elaborate, and one of the things I've always felt you guys were amazing at is this ability to sort of build tension to kind of a critical point, and then the whole thing releases and like kind of blooms. Do you go into songs with that in mind, or you just let the songs?
The Doors are my favorite band, and that was their philosophy for sure. So that's in there, even though I don't listen to a ton of Doors these days, but like it's like my deep rooted. I always love that about them. That was something they would talk about, just building all this tension and get to this point and then release. And it was, so that's definitely, I don't think we set out to do that necessarily like consciously when we're writing, but it's just in there, among other things that are in there.
kind of a footnote, like, yeah.
I kind of remember in the past thinking that, years ago, the version of that band was a little more one-dimensional per song. So I think that was kind of in the back of my mind here and there. It's like, let's add some dynamics,
Well, yeah, and you guys do. I mean, some of the stuff straight up soundscape. I mean, you really go on journeys, and it's a hell of a thing to watch live. I mean, that was my first, when I saw you guys live the first time, I just kind of went, oh my God. And of course, bought every record that you'd put out. So you guys have been working with, have you been working with Jack Endino since the beginning of the band?
Yeah. Even since I worked with them with my old band in the 90s as well. So he's pretty much recorded every actual record that I've ever done and that we've ever done. There was always little demos that people would like, oh, I'm going to the music, whatever school, and I need to do a demo, stuff like that. But any actual release, Jack's recorded it.
But it's got to feel good to have someone you trust, and then of course that long working together. it would, I'm sure he's got a real understanding of what you're after. So that's got to be
Yeah.
reassuring. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was in and out of the band as a bass player as well.
Yeah. I remember he was
over the
subbing for
years,
a while.
so
Yeah.
he knows how we work. I think it gets under his skin a little bit sometimes because we're so picky, and we want so much to do with the production, and so we're always over his shoulder, and he's just like, he's great at, like, he knows what we're doing. He knows that the ultimate goal, we all have the same ultimate goal, which is like, let's make it sound good, let's make it right.
Right.
We're definitely picky in the studio. So
Well, it makes sense. There's a lot of what I would call ear candy in your music.
Yeah.
I mean, like Michelle will hold down a root, and then Steve will paint like 7 pictures over the top of that. And so I
right.
can see you guys wanting
Those
to
are called overdubs, Glenn.
Oh, is that what they call those? Oh, I don't know. How do you pull it off live then? Is it that little
Pedals.
Oh, let's call it looping.
Loops.
No,
I don't know how any of that stuff
Some of
works.
it.
I just do as much as I can.
So, like, will Michelle come to you with a progression, and then you start to go? Because you even do things where, like Steve will be in a remarkably different tuning from Michelle, and
Mhm.
like, what's the genesis of all that? Just experimentation
Sometimes
in
he
the
writes
band
a
setting?
riff in a weird tuning, and I'll just play along, and I'm like, oh, that's a D. I gotta switch guitars, and because I just have 2 guitars. One's normal tuning usually, and the other one's like a little step down. So sometimes we're jamming, and he comes up with something, I'm like, oh, need the other guitar, But a lot of times it's just sometimes normal tuning works over what he's doing, or vice versa. Like I'm doing something that I wrote in normal tuning, and he'll pick up. He'll be in some weird. He's always in some weird tuning.
And I don't want to know what notes I'm playing.
Yeah.
That's the genesis of the alternate tunings.
Yeah.
It's like I teach guitar all day, so I want to turn off that part of my brain, and it's kind of the only way I can play by ear.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
alternate
even
tunings.
if I know what tuning I'm in, I try so hard to not pay attention to, like, this is an E or whatever.
Yeah, follow your ear, follow your
Yeah.
especially with alternate tunings. If you're not quite sure where you've twisted those keys to, I find that you find voicings and things will leap out at you, and you go ooh ah, and it's less theory and more just following yourself around the instrument in a cool way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're saying most of the writing then is done extraordinarily collaboratively. Like Michelle doesn't come in and say, "Hey, I've got this chorus. We got to build a song around it." It's you guys.
Yeah,
Just,
sometimes it's just like one little part, or maybe like 2 parts or something, or we just start jamming at practice, and everyone just kind of follows each other until we kind of stumble on something. Oh, that's cool. What were you doing there? Oh, let's break that down and figure out what and just like analyze it. So we all come up with a part for it. Somebody's got a cool idea, we record everything at practice so that we remember it later.
oh, that's really
Basically.
smart.
Yeah.
So you go back and revisit jams and experimentations, and
Yeah, we have a lot of those like that we still haven't even gone through.
That's the hard part, weeding through like 10 minutes of like, okay, we tried this. Okay, we're trying it again. That's not it. This one. Okay, we'll grab that.
8 minutes and 30 seconds in, there was some magic kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we've been doing that forever. We've worked that way for a long, like as long as the band has been a band, pretty much. We've always been about that. Just like record everything so we don't forget it, and just go back to the idea. Like, oh, there was something cool that night. What was that? What was that one riff?
Yeah, that's a killer way to work. And something else I've noticed. I mean, Steve has a tendency to, and it makes me wonder which came first, kind of thing, where I'll hear themes and melodies repeated throughout the song. Like Michelle will sing a melody, but then when she's not singing, Steve has created a melody or followed that melody or countered that melody. It becomes a call and response thing. So is that all through jamming as well? Like she sings a line, and then like, is that all just as organic as everything else?
I mean, some of that might be thought out, but honestly, lately we'll get the arrangement done. We'll have a finished product, give her, a WAV file, and she goes nuts and goes and does her thing. So I think any call and response is just basically her
sometimes it's
playing off of what I've already done.
Like
maybe.
I'll hear something he did. I'm like, oh, there's a cool melody. I'm gonna bring it over here, or like vice versa. Sometimes like my melody. Once I have a melody, because that's the last thing I put in place usually. Is the vocals. Like I'll write all my guitar parts first, and we'll write as a band and get the whole song piece, at least a pseudo arrangement piece together, and then I'll like put the guitar down, just go by myself and like write vocals to it, and then this is a song now. And at first usually it's like, what am I going to do with all this? This is a crazy like bunch of stuff that's all put together. Like, how am I going to tie this all together vocally and like make it make sense and seem more seamless and not like part. But then like once I get a melody down, sometimes I'll bring that in, and then you might change your part.
Yeah, then that might dictate like, okay,
I'm going to copy that thing here.
That's where I'm going to go now. It's
always like a little liquid, like until it feels like it's okay. We got this thing and it's done. But there's a lot of, changes that happen like through the process.
Yeah, it does sound like it's all very, very liquid. Like I had imagined a scenario where, I didn't realize vocals came that late in the game, especially when having, like being a fan of your music, when I hear how the vocals and the guitars interplay, it's cool to hear like, yep, we've got this thing. And then it's really wise too, that you put your guitar down. Have you ever found that you write a vocal that's very difficult to sing while playing guitar?
All the time.
Every time.
Most times. Yeah.
And she gives me equally hard harmony.
Yeah.
Sometimes even
here's your harmony part, and have fun, learn to play that and sing this.
How am I going to do that?
But back in the day when I first started playing, I was like writing a lot of poetry, and I would basically try to just put like, I was learning to play guitar, and I was kind of just putting guitar to the poetry or vice versa, or trying to slam a poem into an already like arranged parts, and it never felt like it flowed as much as it could. And over the years of collaborating, actually really once I bought my first 4-track from my brother in the 90s, that's when I can first like put my guitar down and just sing, and like I could write a cool guitar part, then I could be like, I'm just gonna sing and not think about what I'm playing, because if I'm thinking about what I'm playing and singing, then I'm limited to what I can do when I'm playing and singing, right? So they both suffer a little bit, but once I was able to put the guitar down, then I'm like, sing this cool thing, just think about vocals, and then I sit down and go like, how am I going to play this at the same time I'm singing? It's kind of like a drummer thing, kind of, using different parts at the same time, and it's definitely been a challenge at times. But you know what? Like once I get that down, I feel like I've just improved. Like I've done something that made myself better that I couldn't do before.
Well,
so that it's a good feeling to be like once I finally get it, I sit down and I say over and over, kind of do the math. Like, okay, this lands here and this lands with this, and that word lands with whatever that chord. That's in the middle of that chord or whatever. Then once I get it down, I really feel like I just accomplished something. And I just improved myself,
Definitely.
Like,
I mean,
I got you.
That's a challenge.
Really, really powerful.
Yeah, it's challenging to the syncopation of the syllables versus what your strumming hand is doing can get really challenging. But I agree with that 100%. Is write your vocals without the guitar, because you will write a better vocal part.
Right.
And then you have to play the two together. But obviously, once you've mastered that, then you've really, because some of the stuff you guys do is obviously really unique. And so, the work pays off. It all comes out seeming so liquid, but I guess it makes me feel better to know that you guys suffer too.
Oh man. He hates me when I'm like, you have the high part there. And then, he's like,
how am I going to do that?
How am I going to do that?
More than once I've had to map out, like in, Guitar Pro software.
No.
I use it to teach.
Should I?
MIDI with like I don't know. Maybe. But you can, write out music and it'll play MIDI files, and, you can speed it up and slow it down and kind of stuff. But I'll have to map out like, okay, sing and play, just sing, just play guitar, just sing, note for note, beat for beat sometimes with her parts that she gives me. And then slowly learn them, slowly start to, actually play it and sing at the same time. It can be quite difficult.
Do you do the thing where like you'll basically play it and watch TV and not sing it out loud, but sort of sing it without making sound to try and train yourself by repetition? Or is it literally like a study hall kind of moment thing?
For me, it's a study hall.
It's very math to me, or just which I admit this until you can do it, and you get closer and closer. Sometimes you really do have to do kind of what he does. I don't use a program to do it, but I just sit there and like just break down, like, okay, wait, just like read along and then be like, okay, where am I changing this, versus that. And yeah, it's fun though. It's like fun work. It's like like I said, once I hate it
fun.
at the moment. At the moment, I hate it, honestly.
Fun.
But it's fun when you freaking do it, and then you're like, I did it. It's just like a satisfying feeling.
I think like next time I see you guys live, it'll be a whole different experience because I'll be looking at Steve thinking, fun.
Right. Totally.
That took me a month, man. A month.
Yeah. You can sing pretty high.
Well, I know, Michelle sticks to roots and generally like a really good, warm, dirty tone or a cleanish tone. But then Steve, you are like your use of effects. Talk to me about kind of what you have going on under your feet, how you make the decisions you make between the tunings and the pedals. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of ear candy. There's a lot of landscape, like she's giving you this tree and you're creating the atmosphere that becomes all the leaves is kind of the way I see you guys as guitarists. It works together amazingly well. Talk to me a bit about like finding that place and working with Michelle, man, like figuring out how and what you wanted to do.
Oh man. It's all about the hamster on my pedal board, man. It all happened.
I gotta find a photo of that so I can fly the footage in, because anyone listening, I can't even. So anyone that's just listening to this, last show or two that I saw Upwell at on Steve's pedal board, at first I thought it was real. I have to admit, I actually thought it was
Everyone
real.
thinks it's real.
It looks real, but it's like a little electrically driven hamster wheel that has like a little stuffed hamster in it, and that guy's just trucking, and I'm like, that it looks real. So, and then of course I'm idiotic enough to think, well, I wonder what sound that makes. Dude, that doesn't make a sound. That thing's got to be deaf. I got to get a closer look.
You kind of Leslie, man. You put a speaker behind him. Yeah, well, seriously.
It was all because you made the new pedal, or you got the new pedal board, the same one that you have that you ended up Velcroing all over.
I did. I got fed up. Did you build yours right?
You were like, oh, I had that pedal board, and just ended up putting Velcro over the whole thing. That pissed me off too much. But he had like a big chunk of space, and he's like, I want to get more pedals, but in the meantime, we were just joking around at practice, and I think Brian was the one that was like,
it'll be full of pedals someday.
To put a hamster cage or something, and we just started joking around about putting something funny there, this dead air, in this empty space on this pedal board until he gets new pedals. And sure enough, I look on Amazon like toy hamster wheel, and there it is. I'm like, here's a present for you. That's how that came about. It was a joke,
epic, man. Like that's got pyro beaten hands down.
Yeah, I have to leave at least one spot for that guy.
Oh yeah, at this point I think people would be bummed, like, oh
yeah, right.
Or like the little guy finally tuckered out,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Anyway,
outside of the hamster, yeah.
Man, that's so open ended. That's hard to answer. I don't know. I think I just kind of try different things and see what sticks.
I mean, have
sometimes I want to just do like a stereo guitar thing and play the exact same thing as her, on certain sections. But other times I just kind of want to be more like a keyboard player, I guess, and just make some atmosphere or just kind of a background single note melody.
Have you always? Oh no! Well, I was going to say, have you always worked just with what you had, or do you often buy pedals going, oh man, that's neat, and I think I can use it in this way? I mean, how do you go about? You know what I'm saying?
I just thought. Yeah, I do that sometimes. If I have the money, I just bought I bought a big Sky just for a certain couple of new songs, and it does exactly what I want to do. So yeah, that kind of wrote the part for sure.
Sure, man. Yeah, I mean, you do a lot of elaborate textural stuff, so I just wondered if it was more of a, okay, this is what I've got, this is how I'll use it, or if it was a, man, I want to try that because I think if I buy this pedal, I might be able to do this and this and this. And yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I feel like he plays really intuitively too. He's just a chameleon. Like, since I've ever known him, he can play with anyone and just kind of conform to what they're doing, and he's just really good at that. Like, just he's a music teacher. He's been teaching since he was what? Kid, really?
A kid.
His old students in Kansas, one of them would trade guitar lessons for eggs.
Really?
I used to get, yeah, this one guy gave me eggs. I used to get like records,
That's not all bad.
like country swing records. They're awesome. Yeah, this one guy couldn't really afford it. He's like, here, I got some records. I'm like, okay, that's fine.
So now you got to sit around and learn all this hybrid picking stuff, which I think you do anyway. Don't you do a bunch of hybrid picking? Yeah, man.
There you go. Yeah, for
So
sure.
yeah, like.
But I think
Awesome,
our teacher in him just knows how to do anything. You know, he's had to teach everyone how to do everything. He teaches all different styles, and I feel like that all comes across. Or he's just like a sponge too. Like if I get into a certain band, like for a while, I'll be like making him listen to it all the time, and eventually he'll start doing the shit that's in there. I'm like,
Right.
I can't even do that shit. I'm not that good of a player, but like it's cool that he'll do it. You know what I mean?
Well, it's one of those things that, and it's weird. I feel that guitarists most of all get lost in this trapping where it sounds funny to say, but it seems so obvious. Music is a listening art. So it sounds like Steve, instead of just playing, listens to what's happening around him and then reacts to it. And I know a lot of really talented guitar players that don't necessarily do that. They understand what's happening and then they throw themselves at it.
Yeah.
So it sounds like when you're talking about Steve being a sponge, I think that's what it is you step into a situation and really listen and then respond and thereby elevate what's happening around you. And you would think that's the way all musicians approach music, but not always. I've played with drummers that don't even really do that, which, that's like having a weird spine. Well,
Well, it's much easier in alternate tunings, I gotta say.
I would think
because I'm not immediately, going to, whatever box.
Thinking about the boxes.
Yeah, so
And
you're
it turns
forced
out
to be
the
creative right out of the gate.
theory
Yeah.
and all that, and I'm just listening.
Nice, man. Yeah.
Oh, that's
yeah.
a cool chord. If I listen too close, I might be like, oh, of course, that's this, whatever. But
Yeah. Well, so I had mentioned drummers. You've had a bit of a drummer adventure before landing on our man Paul.
Haven't we all?
Yeah, I can relate, but I mean,
Yeah.
fill us in a bit on that journey. That kind of stuff it's hard to find the right guy, especially when you're not doing what I would call cut and dried music. You guys are extraordinarily creative, so it's got to be the right fit. Talk to me about that journey a little bit.
I mean, we've known Paul since like 2003. We figured out maybe from the jam box, like when we were in different bands, and we played like some a house party for him when he was doing house parties at this place. So we knew him from way back, and we knew Brian. We met Brian, but we didn't know him as well. But our bass player, but it was just we kind of lost touch with Paul over the years, and then kind of through Facebook, reconnected with him, and eventually when we were looking for a new drummer again, we just kind of it was just such a natural fit. It was kind of, I mean, Will was actually the one that was like, oh, Upwell's looking for someone. Will was actually filling in for us for a split second, It's So we told Paul, because they've been friends since even before that, way back. Like, oh, Upwell's looking for a drummer, and I think our friend Edmund had commented on a post when Paul was like, hey, I'm looking into drumming again. Is anybody looking? And so it just kind of like happened, like we just kind of reconnected, and we're like, oh, Paul, of course. Like, we knew he was a great drummer. We knew he was a cool guy. So it was kind of funny because I think we met up with him, or we saw him at a show at Substation where we practiced, and we basically just gave him the keys there. We're like, oh, move your drums into our room, and then we'll just see what happens. This is totally how it happened. So we just trusted him. We knew him. We're like, here's the keys to all of our shit. Gave him the keys to our room, and we just are like, move your stuff in when you have time. And then we just started jamming and, working on some stuff that we already had, and, just trying out a few songs to see if it was a good fit. And then, and then we were like, this is working, this is great. And then we were looking for a bass player. I mean, Jack was still playing with us at the time, but he's so busy, and now we had like a solid drummer that was like ready to be there and like write songs with us and the whole bit. And we're just like, man, we really want a bass player that's also able to do, a couple nights a week, solid every week, and be part of the writing process and all that. And Jack doesn't always he was always like great to just, play a couple practices, play a show or whatever, but he's so busy recording and, everything. So, Paul suggested, first we tried out a few people that weren't working, and then Paul kept trying to talk Brian into joining because he had been in a band with Brian's stepdaddy before, years ago. And so they were already like, rhythm section team. So that worked out. We finally was able to kind of lure him. It's so funny too, when Brian came to audition for us, he showed up with no bass and he just like sat and listened to what we were doing. We're like, dude, this motherfucker is auditioning us. Like, what is happening right now? This is so funny. We're like,
that's
okay,
awesome.
You're gonna come
That's
listen.
so
It's like,
awkward.
wanted to check it out. It was so funny.
Totally.
That's hilarious.
It just worked out, and it felt good because we've been a team for so long, and so we have our thing, and any one person that comes into that picture is probably going to feel like a third wheel or a little bit of, this kind of thing. They're just trying to learn, their place in that, and then they already had their thing, and as a rhythm section, it's like super important. They've already played together, they already know how to play together, and they're best buddies. So it's like,
That's
it
phenomenal.
just felt like a really good balance because we already kind of had that with us, and so we always joked after that, like, it's Upwell in the front, stepdaddy in the back.
Well,
And it's really worked ever since then.
yeah,
so.
the morale of the project, like even in just the photos and having seen you guys live, it seems like everyone's really in a good place, which is always that translates, whether you realize it or not. That comes off the stage at the audience, I think.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
but it's cool. It's funny. I remember Stepdaddy, but I had forgotten those guys were in that project together. So that's a
They were
score.
crazy.
Yeah, man. That's a
Well,
score.
that music is insane.
That music's insane, so it's a good fit. Like, the insanity of that and the weirdness of what we do just kind of just works,
Well, so those guys coming in, they had some, older songs to learn, but what was the process like creatively? Did it happen very naturally as you started to write new stuff as a band?
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, with Paul, yeah, we just clicked and just jammed. Brian came in eventually, same thing. Just we learned a couple of old tunes just to have like a full set,
and some new
and a couple of
tunes.
new songs. And then COVID.
When COVID hit,
Oh.
we were like so ready to play gigs. We were so close to being.
We were totally ready.
We're like-
We at least had a set,
Yeah, we're like, okay, I think we have a pretty solid set.
2019, ready to go. Beginning of 2020, that's gonna be our year.
Yeah, like
2020.
a lot of people,
Well,
Everyone had
everyone
dreams.
I've
Yes.
talked to,
Goals.
everyone I've talked to has talked about how COVID ruined their lives. What did you guys do during
Right.
COVID? Did you just
Well,
sit around
first
and
we did
write?
nothing.
Or?
We did-
Like everyone,
we did
like
nothing.
hid in for 6 months or something, and then finally we're like, because at first it was like, oh, 2 weeks, oh, maybe another 2 weeks, oh, it just kept dragging out, and pretty soon we're like, this isn't ending anytime soon, is it? So we finally we're like, let's practice with masks on. We had this little tiny room. We're like this will be our bubble. We go outside our bubble.
Yeah, we made that our
Well-
bubble, and we just decided like we'll only like hang out with these two guys and no one else.
If somebody like strays outside the bubble, we'll all like isolate and test, right? And we did that for a minute, and then we finally got moved into a little bigger of a room, and pretty soon it was like, we could take our masks off and keep the bubble, because it sucks playing with masks on and a little
Singing
tiny
with the
room,
masks
singing,
on.
Oh, dude, yeah,
playing
I know.
drums with the mask on. All of it sucks, So yeah, and eventually, we just then the world, how it went.
And I'm just sitting here with the word bubble upgrade running through my head, like
Right?
bubble upgrade, bigger bubble. Ooh, I
Right?
can take the mask off for a minute. And then, okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
like, do you
Oh
like
my
the
God.
part?
Right? Smile. You
Can't you
see
tell from?
this? Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing. Like, are you angry with me? I can't quite,
No, I'm laughing, dude.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
crazy times, man.
Oh man, rough times. I mean, God, everyone I've talked to has told me a story about X, Y, and Z, then COVID. And this was happening, then COVID. I mean, I think, we'll be feeling the repercussions of that
Yeah, for sure.
forever, maybe.
Kids like going through school and formative years, and like people that like were supposed to get married. There's so many situations where it's just, or people that lost people. I mean, more importantly,
Oh, yeah.
that
I
like
lost
couldn't see their
a few
family, and then
friends.
someone died, and they didn't even get to see them. And
There's
so many
interesting friends on the East Coast, some of which were devout anti-vaxxers and are now no longer with us. Like, just crazy stuff. And I know, I was working with Live Oak Audio Visual, which of course all their work went away. But next thing you know, we were streaming high school graduations, and it's like they would do a drive-by in a car, and the kid would get up, and it was just so crazy. I'm thinking like, like that's a moment. And they're not kidding that, everyone was in cars, and they'd get out of their car, come up, get their diploma, get back in a car. And just strange times, man. Thank God you guys, you came out the other side of it still a band.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. And finally we're able to start playing some gigs, and
Okay, so speaking of that, when are the next shows? What do you guys have in mind for next year? I mean, what's going on in that front?
The release party for sure.
Yeah.
That's going to happen. We don't know exactly when.
Booked that yet.
But we want to make it something big, some kind of event.
Yeah. The record's done, but the artwork's still almost done. Just trying to get those last pieces together, and really all that's held us up the whole time is money. It's like, okay, let's see. The studio takes longer than you think, and you go through all that money, then you're like, well, I still need to finish those overdubs, and gotta wait a little bit. Well, we need a master. We need to do this. So it just takes time when you're funding yourself mostly. I mean, we had one friend, Don Clifton, that helped us out with a little bit. Our bass player put in some money. We had some band money. Tried to put in a little individual money. It's just pieced together over the year and a half.
Shoestring. Everything I do is total shoestring.
Exactly.
And you definitely have your goals, but then you look at your checking account and go, "Oh Christ, how am I going to do this?"
For sure. But yeah, we definitely want to get the record done and out, and
it's done. Artwork's almost done. We'll make things to sell.
Yeah,
and it'll happen.
Do you guys already have any shows on the books?
March 1st at Daryl's with Sorsha and Green River Thriller, so that's going to be a really fun bill.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, these guys are all
that is a bill. That's at Daryl's?
Yeah. So that'll be, unless something pops up sooner for some reason, that's probably our next show. We were just like, we were taking all these shows, and we kept getting sidetracked, trying to finish the record. Then you know how that goes. You got to rehearse for shows, and you got to load all your gear to shows, and you can load it back in, and set everything back up again. And you're just like, it's a distraction, And so we're just like, let's get this record done. Let's not worry about booking shows for a minute. Let's focus on that and get it done. So it's done.
And we're writing new songs.
And we've been writing
before this thing's even done. We're already writing the next thing. So
no, that's you guys. I am always a fan of never stop writing. Never ever stop writing. I mean, I wish I spent as much time trying to become a better guitarist as I do writing.
Whatever, dude.
Well, no, man, but when I pick up the instrument, I'm looking for a progression or a hook or this, or sometimes it's an idea that's been floating around for 6 months, and I'll poke it and see if today's the magic day. Oh, no, it's not, and so, but that's awesome that you're always writing. Cause I just think I don't know. I'm just a fan of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's always good to have that creative excitement and that,
you get bored playing your same songs over and over.
That can just suck the life out of a song, we play it every night, 4 nights a week,
Yeah, it's tough, man, because that's the only way to perfect it and get super tight and get ready to gig. But it does suck the life out of it.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a balance, you gotta, it's like anything else in life. You got to find that balance. And because I do think there's such a thing as being over rehearsed as much as there is being under rehearsed. So it sounds like you guys have a good balance. Like I said, the energy coming off the stage feels so positive that I can only assume that no one's like, man, I'm super burned out, you know?
Right? Yeah. No, we're definitely
not performing, man. Performing's always just so much fun.
yeah.
Oh,
I mean, that's why we do this. But that's the best.
Yep. That's the only reason. Yeah. And when I don't do it often, I get weird. So like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? You start to get weird. You're like, I don't care if there's 6 people there. I really need to go play. It's just,
Yeah,
you know,
you can't get that from rehearsal.
She does bad.
I
yeah.
noticed that, like, what's wrong with me? And then we play a gig. I'm like, oh, I feel much better now. Yeah, there's just like a release you can't get from playing, even if in your best rehearsal or whatever, or writing process, whatever. There's just the connection with the audience. Even like you said, even if it's only a handful of people or whatever, it's just that release that you can't.
Yeah.
It's like that feeling of like getting nervous before, you know, a show, and just sometimes you just feel like you're gonna throw up or whatever. And it's just like that buildup of like, what's gonna happen? Is it gonna suck? Is it gonna be amazing? I have no idea, you know. But it's like that, all those feelings, and then you get up on stage and like, usually you know from like note 1 or like at least the first like 30 seconds or a minute, you can already tell like, oh, this show's gonna suck, or like, oh, this is gonna be a killer show. You know what I mean? You can just feel like things are gonna go well tonight, or things are not gonna go well. You know what I mean? Sometimes you can just tell right away.
But sometimes, you know, that will happen, but the other 3 members will be like, that was so great,
That's
man.
The hard thing.
That was the best show of my life.
Yeah, it always is.
Like, that's my favorite show ever. Oh, I had a shitty show.
Oh man, a show we did over the summer that was an outdoor show. We got off stage and I was like, oh, thank God that's over. And then, you know, all 3, you know, Manny, Jeff, and Louie were like, dude, that was so much fun. And I'm like,
right?
You know, I'm just losing my mind. I had a rough one, you know? Yeah. It's funny how that works, but I know what you mean. Like it's that first chord. Yeah. You know, well, for me, I gotta like what I'm hearing. If I don't, I mean, it obviously it's never going to be perfect or whatever, but if I'm really not liking what I'm hearing, it's really hard for me to get into it and enjoy myself. You know, like that's my thing. Like if my guitar sounds super dry or, oh my God, something's I can't, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's what'll throw me. Like, not having monitors, who cares? But like if my guitar doesn't sound right,
for sure.
Right.
The only thing that fixes that for me is just like gigging.
Yeah.
Getting into like different scenarios and like it's always going to sound like shit and just get used to it.
Yeah, that's true. People don't realize.
Really doesn't sound perfect.
Yeah, you know, it's what you hear on stage is so different than what the audience hears. So many people they just don't realize that. And then of course we've been doing it so long, we take it for granted. But you get off stage, you're like, oof, you know, I had a rough one. And they're like, that's the best show I've ever seen.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Did you guys find coming out of COVID that I used to feel like it was maybe 3 months. You want to book about 3 months out, and most clubs had dates 3 months out. Did you find after COVID that it started to feel more like 5 to 7 months?
It's feeling like a longer for the most part.
Yeah.
Not everywhere, but
it seems like we were getting a lot of last minute, like, hey, do you guys want to play? Do you want to play?
Yeah, that's happened.
Things were kind of happening fast, but yeah, for sure.
Like if you're trying to put a whole build together or something, you definitely have to look further out for that. So.
Yeah, it seemed like it used to be kind of 3-4 months, and now the other change I noticed, I mean, beyond having to, you know, I was trying to put together a bill, and I was hitting bands up about June. And I'm like, dude, that's 8-9 months away. I
don't even know what I'm doing in June.
But I'm like, yeah, exactly. And I'm like, well, here's the thing is I'm actually challenging a hold. Like, what? I'm like, I'm challenging a hold. Like, I can't get the date without a bill. So I kind of need you to say, yes, I'll be there. And if you can, I get it. But I'd never been in that position, especially 7 months. But
yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, it was mind blowing to me. And then the other thing I found was, a lot of venues quit doing music on Sundays and Mondays and even Tuesdays. Did you guys run into any of that with your bookings?
Well, we don't really try to do those dates unless it's just a great bill or something.
Right.
Because I just feel like we can't draw as well. I just know that about us. Like that, you know, we're not 21.
No, and it's more touring. Like you need that connecting date to pay for the next show kind of thing.
Totally. If it was like, you know, a bigger bill that's going to draw, then yeah. But yeah, so we don't. I mean, we do need to tour more. I'd love to tour more. So we'll probably run into that more. Yeah,
it's tough out here. everything is so spread out, you know. Me and the guys were talking about literally about like, yeah, we drove 6 hours to play a bitchin' club in Eugene, Oregon, and it was killer. And we had a great turnout, and they actually really love us there. And we made enough money to pay for the trip, but then we drove 6 hours home right after. So it's 12 hours round trip for one show. And then you try to book a tour, and it's like, well, sorry, we don't do music on Sundays anymore. Sorry, it's like, how am I gonna? Yeah, it's interesting. People don't realize. They're like, oh, come out to Spokane, and it's like, well, that's 6 hours one way or five. You know, and then imagine driving 5 hours to play a show where you make $80 and then driving 5 hours home. It's 10 hours, 10 hours round trip, you know.
You get no hotel for $80 anymore. I mean, maybe some hotels, but
well, I don't know if you want to stay there. Like, how'd you guys all get pink eye? Well,
right. Yeah.
Oh man. Well, like, so beyond, you've got a couple singles coming out and the record coming out. Is there anything in particular you're psyched about coming into this next year, or just keep on trucking? I mean, what are your thoughts?
I mean,
the year
for
to come?
me, just having this thing done.
Yeah,
it's
we've been
taken
working
us
on it
so long to put this together and to, you know, stay active, you know, do something, writing new songs helps, but I just want to get back to it, you know.
Yeah.
Get back in front
Have
of people.
product with the people that are actually in our band.
Yeah, there were so many years
Yeah.
where it's like, oh, we only have these CDs. Sorry, this one's really old. It's a different member. You know what I mean? So it's just nice, like moving forward, we're writing new songs with these guys, and we're already working on the next, you know, batch of songs. And
That's cool. That's great to hear, man.
it's good.
Well, I think we're creeping up on. Is there anything you guys want to share before we wrap up for the night? Of course, thanks, you know, so much for hanging out with me.
Thanks for having
Yeah,
us.
thanks
You
for
know,
having it.
dude, I'm just a huge fan of your band, and you know, we'll be posting this everywhere, and you know, everyone should be really amped to hear what you got coming, because it's cool. It's really cool. And thank
thanks.
you guys for that, by the way, you know.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
For sure. So beyond just the new EP, anything you guys want to hype or talk about, or?
I wish we had more to hype. That's the major thing in our lives for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we could sit around and talk guitar tones all night.
For sure.
All right. Well, everybody,
I
Steve,
know where you're at right now, by the way.
Are you at your home studio?
yeah, I'm in
or-
my office. It's lit
Okay,
like a
love
haunted
it.
house. I tried so many different things, and finally I was like, I'll just make the foreground kind of dark and neat. And then I've got one light over here. But
Yeah.
yeah. And then if you look, I don't know, man. I'm so tired of hauling 412 cabs up and down stairs that I've actually bought a pair of 212 slants.
Okay.
And the problem is they sound like 212 slants. So now I'm fabricating partially open back to increase the airspace and make them sound more like combos. And, you know,
We were just talking about like how can we play at Daryl's and set our stuff up quickly because it takes us so long.
Like-
It's so much gear.
Yeah, we just have too
I
much.
do two amps. Paul's drums are huge, and it takes us so long. Like, how can we like pare down and still make it happen?
Like tear down for smaller places, but yeah, still
well, Michelle,
sound.
you run the orange cab with the 410 on top of it. Is that a basement or a classic 50? What is
Well,
that?
I actually don't even use the speakers. It's a Fender Blues DeVille.
Okay.
I just use that as a head, and then
Right.
I run the orange cab just because it's beefier. And the speakers on the Fender are just so bright, and I love Fender amps the way they break up, but it's just like the meteor sound that comes through the orange. It's low
But
end.
It makes sense to pump it into that. I mean, those cabs are designed with a lot of airspace. They sound
Yeah.
huge. Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, like technically, if we wanted to play a smaller show, I could just bring the Fender and plug in those speakers. But I hate the way they sound, so I'm not going to do that.
No, you couldn't. No, you couldn't, because you'd play one chord and be like,
Yeah.
oh, no.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
And then Steve,
So,
you run a is it a 610 silver face
It's a
Fender?
412.
412.
quad reader.
Oh, okay.
I've had it forever.
Dude, it's been a part of your live rig as long as I've known you. And then you used to run the Marshall half stack, and last I saw you, I think you're running an Egnator, a Renegade, maybe. Yeah.
Yep. I've had that for a few years and love it.
Do you just straight ABY, or do you do any kind of panning and blending? How do you run the two rigs?
ABY. That's about it.
Okay.
It's usually Fender's clean, Magnator's dirty, but for certain sections, I might have, a tube screamer on the clean amp and run them both, that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure.
Kind of nice because I get a lot of mid range there, and the other amp sounds kind of scooped.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting seeing the taller Fender combo because I knew they had done the 610s, and all these years I assumed it was a 610, but I always wondered how you got it to sound as beefy, and you're like, aha, it's 12s, So that's cool, man. Yeah, you guys.
Yeah, I've actually been thinking about replacing that.
Really?
And getting some kind of closed back clean rig. Yeah, I still want to run 2 amps. I don't know. I'm so used to it. It's just so part of my ecosystem. I don't know if I could go to just 1 amp.
It's always I ran 2 half stacks forever. And then I went to 1 head but 2 cabs. But I won't say there wasn't a sacrifice there. So I know exactly what you mean, man. It's like, okay, I don't have to haul as much and it sounds good, but I know what you mean, man. There's a thing you can create.
Stereo effects at times, or like a clean dry kind of thing.
Yeah. It was the same as like Michelle going from
emulate that with like a fractal or something, but I don't know.
Well, and I'll tell you, man, I mean, recently Fender put out that Tone Master Pro, and I'd played through a couple of the Fender Tone Master amps, and other than the way the attenuation was set up, I was like, man, that ain't bad. Really? So I bought one and I messed around with it, and I kind of thought maybe this is the way I'm headed. And then I had this little TC Electronics sort of Marshall preamp pedal, and I was like, well, I wonder what I'll think of that after spending 2 days with this $1,700 modeler. And I plugged it in my little $150 pedal and went, oh shit. And I returned the modeler. So it's like, I think people like us, like that are used to, I'm not saying it isn't great. I think to get what I would have benefited more, I should have had powered speakers and all this kind of stuff, but it's like a total rig swap where I was running basically a small power amp into a 412. And that's, like, no matter what, I'm going to want to push air on stage. I just.
Yeah.
For sure. I don't know if I could ever do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I know there's guys that travel the world with just a briefcase.
Leprous. You ever seen those guys?
on stage. What the fuck?
The only thing you can hear on stage is acoustic drums. They all have in-ears, and it sounds amazing.
It sounded great.
But, man, I want to feel it hit me in the butt.
I do too. And I mean, you're like, you need your extra members, your sound guy at that point. You need them.
Yeah.
More than
you better have a sound guy you trust, because he can ruin your
everything.
Yeah.
It's kind of great, and it works for them and what they're doing. But I can't imagine not feeling that air. And just same with like in-ear monitors. I don't know if I could sing with in-ear monitors. I'm just seems so like. It's like wearing earplugs. I fight wearing earplugs all the time because I know I need to.
Yeah. Oh, I do too.
Halfway out, because I can't. I don't want to feel underwater or disconnected.
Paul McCartney's still using wedges.
Yeah.
Well, it's it all comes. If you don't like what you're hearing, you can't do what you do. And right. I'm the same way. I can't wear earplugs, and mainly it's because I don't like what it does to my guitar tone.
Yeah.
And of course, anyone with half a brain is not wrong in saying, Glenn, the audience is hearing a 57 through a Mackie desk through the mains. They're not hearing, but I need to hear it, man.
Oh, yeah.
They're playing completely differently,
Yeah, no, but you see a lot of artists. I mean, you watch like Michael Stipe with REM, and half the show he's got one in, one out, for the same reasons of, I need to hear the room. I need to feel the air. Like, I don't know if it's a thing that'll go away generationally, because I see a lot of younger musicians playing really good sounding direct rigs, but then I see a lot of younger musicians with 2 Mesa half stacks. It's
yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
it's very true. So I guess it's all a matter of what you can make work for you. But you guys always have amazing tones, so it's fun geeking out about the rigs. And I don't know. Next time what I ran into with the 212s is I had to get one that was a slant, so there'd be a speaker kind of pointed at my head. But they sounded smaller and they're sealed. So I'm thinking, if I open that thing up, it'll be more like a blues breaker. So I'm going to have to fabricate my own backs to let those things breathe, to try and make them sound as big as a 412. It's like I'm going for the tone that Michelle gets out of her orange cab with something that's half the size, and I felt it immediately. I was like, ah, why so tiny? Come on, come on, come on, big fella, But
Right.
it's all about ease of load in, and then smaller stages.
Yeah.
Like, what am I gonna do? Like, every time I go to Jazz Bones, I end up just doing one half stack, and I lose the feeling of that cab on either side of the drummer, and so I don't know. Boo hoo. Right?
Can you hear both of those on stage?
Yeah. Well,
Like, are they
yes.
kind of aimed at you?
Yeah, I kind of point them at me, and I do everything I can, no matter where the venue is, to keep the guitar out of my wedge. And I don't mind having I don't like to be loud on stage, but the reason I started doing it was years ago when I was doing gigs as a 3-piece. It occurred to me immediately that anyone on the bass player side of the stage couldn't hear a damn thing I was doing, because most clubs don't have center fill. Smaller clubs don't need them. So bass, when it comes out of the cab, it goes everywhere. Bass energy expands everywhere, but guitar energy is like a laser beam. So
Right,
I was
really
like,
is.
yeah, man. So I was like, man. So I started putting a cab on either side of the drummer. Now
Yeah.
with window pane, even with window pane, I had a cab on either side of the drummer, and then Tony was on one side, Mark was on the other, or Kristen later. But in my project, I've just done the same thing. It's not as much about me as it is the audience. Like, no matter where they are, they can hear the guitar. And also with the two cabs, I always try to keep my stage volume low, not crazy low. I mean, I don't want to hear it, but low enough that the sound guy doesn't want to choke me, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's like you with the blending of the two amps. Like, it's a lot to lug out. It's a lot to squeeze on stage, but it's okay. Am I going to cut off 2 fingers, or am I going to, it's weird.
Right.
Yeah. It's the give and
Yeah.
take of all that. Even playing full stacks, which I quit doing it just because I got sick of lugging this stuff.
Yeah.
But even full stacks in a small club, the main reason I did it, like I did a full stack at Slim's Last Chance, and my volume on my amp was like at 1.5. When you
Yeah.
got a 412 behind your head, the volume comes down.
Oh, yeah.
And it throws across the top of the audience. So everyone was like, dude, are you crazy? And then when I was playing, it was like, oh, that worked beautifully. And that's actually why I started playing full stacks. Anymore, I'm just too goddamn lazy to lug all this shit around.
Fucking outside of Twins or inside? Outside?
Outside, I would do it outside too. Like, these days, I've just been doing the 2 half stacks, but the thing that always gets me with outside is it's so dry because there's no room coming back at you.
Uh-huh.
And none of my amps
Outside's
have.
always been weird.
Oh, there's no room. It's bone dry. So
Yeah.
I've started, like, the newer head I've got has an effects loop in it. I can add a reverb or a delay or just something. But that's what gets me about outside is it's bone dry, and yeah, that's hard. That's terrible. I did a show like Guitars Under the Stars, and afterwards Larry Mitchell, who's just phenomenal, and he just travels the world with his guitar and a fractal pedal board. He came up, he's like, so you were just running a Les Paul into like a Plexi? And I'm like, yeah. And he just kind of went, like, almost like,
Really? Oh,
like, why would you do that to yourself? Was pretty much what he was saying. Like, Jesus Christ, man. I'm like, yeah, it was really tough today. He's like, oh, you played really well. And he was shaking his head like, what are you, a sadist? And he's right. It was brutal, but it sounded good inside. I don't know.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
Well, at least you work somewhere you can try out, all kinds of flavors.
Oh yeah, well that's been good and bad too, because I'm surrounded with so much stuff that now it just opens.
My quad reverb sounds so good in a corner or anywhere near a wall. It just fills it.
Yep.
Tons of thump, tons of bass.
Open back.
On stage, it's just like nothing. It's like it doesn't exist.
Really?
Transparent, nothing but high end. Yeah.
Is it open back or closed back?
It's open back, and I added a kind of a little partition.
Yeah.
Mainly to put chords in the back, but it did kind of help the sound a little bit.
Yeah, I wondered if what you were hearing was the back of it hitting the wall and coming out, whereas if you're on a bigger stage where it doesn't have something behind it to give you that, maybe that's what you're hearing acoustically. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
And these are the things that'll keep us up at night.
Oh, and you rent a jam space in Seattle. You don't have much room usually. You're against the wall.
That's the thing, and I get so used to that.
Yeah,
you get
that's the way. Yeah.
In a small space, and you get on a bigger stage, and you're like, wow.
Well, you get so dialed in, period,
Yeah.
and that's why it's so tough to gig.
Yeah.
right? You get so used to everything's just exactly like you want, or everything's in the same place. You show up, plug in, start jamming, sounds perfect. Go play a show, it's just like, oh my God, you know.
When you end up on stage, is there a common tweak that you find you have to make? Like, for example, I know that this room is bright, so I get it dialed, but I'll go live and be like, and then I basically have to brighten my amp because I've darkened it for this room. Do you run into that kind of thing?
I have the opposite problem usually.
Yeah. Well, no, but that's what I mean. Like any kind of
really bright, even like through the orange, like that amp is fucking loud and bright. And like I have it on 1 or just over 1, and it's loud. And my brother played the same amp through it, like a keyboard through it, and he's like, "Yeah, those amps are fucking loud." Like I don't know why it's so loud, but yeah. So I usually end up already dialing down like the treble, maybe even a little mids, turning up bass just a little, you know, on any bigger stage, any gig stage.
But it's like, you know, when you get to the gig, you're like, I'm probably going to have to do this.
Just start there. Yeah, pretty much.
Those are usually so much further away from the amps than we are when we're jamming.
Unless we're at like Daryl's or something, you know. But like if you're at like, if you're playing the showbox or you're playing even the high dive or, you know, anywhere you have more wall further away behind, you know, it's going to sound. Or what's the stage made out of? Is the stage hollow? Is it, you know, there's so many factors, you know.
But it is tricky
a lot, but then you just get used to all those differences. And
well, you know, you work so hard on your tone, like you said, Steve. You really fight to get it dialed, and now you're like, oh, that's so inspiring.
Yeah.
And now you're in front of people, and you're like, that is no longer inspiring. Shit.
Yeah, totally. Usually it's just like, oh my God, it's so much high end. But my ears are kind of weird. Sometimes I think I interpret volume as high end.
Yeah.
You know,
perceived volume. Yeah, there's that thing I call perceived volume. Like it seems louder, but it may not be. Yeah, I know what you mean. I struggle with that too. Is it too loud or is it too bright? I'm not sure. You know, and of course you roll the top end out, and okay, now is it dark or is that perceived volume? Or you can make yourself nuts, man. You know.
Yeah.
Totally.
So do you guys lean on each other? Like, do you do the Michelle, does it sound okay? Steve, does it sound, yes, you sound good, that kind of thing?
Yeah, kind of quickly. You know, you have like this much time at a gig to be like, hey, how do I sound? I think good. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, ask one of your friends up front that's a musician, you know, like, how do we sound? Do we sound balanced? What's up? Yeah, it sounds good. Oh, no, more of Steve or more of, you know. It's like you got 2 seconds to be that kind of
I'm just picturing like next show, like just standing in front of one of the two of you and going like, you're like, oh shit, what? I'm like, oh, I stepped on a Lego, man. Give you 5 minutes of like, oh god damn it, what the fuck is wrong? Oh man. Well, all right, guys. Yeah, it's been awesome hanging out. Thanks so much for being on the show. Of course, I'll have links to all your stuff. Everyone definitely check out Upwell. Remarkably talented group of individuals, amazingly unique music. And for anyone in the Pacific Northwest, definitely get out and see this band live because that's where they shine. And you guys know I'm a huge fan. So thanks so much for hanging out. And your amazing background, which I still, is that CGI? Are you fucking with me? Is that really?
It's real.
That's
real.
How did you keep that fire burning so well?
It's a Duraflame. It must be a good one.
I know, man. It's like, no, that's a TV shoved in there, bro.
Yeah, right? Yeah, usually those Duraflames don't last as long, so I'm actually impressed.
Yeah, it's doing well. It's doing well, man. All right, you guys. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. And man, have a great holiday, and I'll look forward to the next event. Love you guys.
For sure. Hey, love you too.
Cheers.
Bye.